Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining for the Open dApp Framework session. And today we have introductory research session for the Open dApp Framework proposal. Before I go into the proposal and the expectations, what I set up for myself and the way we could run this session, I will give a quick brief on how this started. So 7 months ago and almost 5 months ago, there was a huge commotion that, oh, dWork looks very good platform to use, and which is a project management application. And back then, everybody just kind of jumped into using it and found ways to make it useful, but had no documentation around how to actually use it and what it can be used for. The application itself constantly keeps changing, so that's one interesting part of that. But that discussion thought was like, is there a way we could combine our different projects in a way that we could share our resources and perhaps even methods? How could we like leverage each other's methods to do our work and not spend time thinking, okay, should we use this model, should we do this kind of task, but more of like copy pasting each other's standards. Out of that, the next session, Stephen already found a way that this could actually be something we can turn into proposal. And the proposal was written, refined, and now actually even funded. So we're really going into that and trying to, in these next few sessions, share our experiences already, what kind of tasks we do, what kind of, how do we manage our processes, and then come up with some analysis and some clear guidelines and standards we could share each other with. And this is going to be like a 4-month cycle. And on top of that, we're kind of also creating like an educational course that we are able to scale and grow the things we are like setting out to do and test it if the hypothesis and all the models we are finding patterns from our collective network and work. To come some few sentences from the proposal, like starting with the problem statement. There is no general framework for a decentralized project management, decentralized application. And so here we are to conduct an analysis of existing project management dApps to provide general open source framework and document it as a project-based learning material models. So here we already include some of the Gimbal Labs work, like to thinking methodically, how do we capture this kind of documentation and also grow our and iterate on the research and the works and analysis we do in here. And the outcome, or expected outcome, will be this will provide a snapshot of the use cases of various community nodes. What do they have in common and what differentiates them? And when we build this framework behind it, it is good to find these differences and make sure that the framework is able to kind of accommodate all of the different optionalities people would need in order to manage their projects. And we intend to do a functional analysis of the common use cases and consider various abstract models or design patterns that may be used in specific circumstances. So there was a lot of blurb sentences. Anybody already has questions or some comments they want to add? Thank you, Alex, for thumbs up. And hey, the next stuff, a bit orientation on the Miroboard itself. First of all, when you zoom out, you will see there is not just the workshop agenda itself. Right now, we are in this kind of area where current session will be held. So these are covered in like yellow boxes. But when you zoom out, there will be also in the top session management tools. This is an older version. If I zoom out right now, there already stuff is happening and more boxes are appearing. And this will remain like the same structure for the rest of the sessions. And what it actually entails is that all of that work which is going into doing these current workshops themselves, all of that will be documented, and a lot of that will be used with the same thought process of trying to kind of make it easier and modeled a way that everybody can take the resources we learned and also reuse it for their own projects. And that's a cool way to kind of do it. I don't know, like well written yeah. I don't know where my thought was going, but basically, so that's like an overview. And then there's also like a session management area. So there is where project meetings are happening, roadmaps, like so that everybody has a clear vision of what's to come. And then finally, a framework area, which will be then over time upgraded to include all the elements in order to be able to capture all the work done in when you do the project management. I also gave some minute estimations how long each of these sections come. They're not like very sharp, but just to make sure that we could cover different kind of areas and have discussions around what tasks or bounties you're recording or looking forward to record to manage project process. And then we look into task management, documentation, and communication. And finally, the main one of the third main topic is coordination management. So in that, once we get into that, we'll share more closely what kind of things I'm requesting there and what kind of information I'm looking for. And of course, lastly, we do some retrospective and look at the differentials, and finally, we also have a session feedback. So, any questions about orientation, or we can jump into first agenda topic? Let's go then. So what are the tasks or bounties you are recording or looking forward to record to manage project processes? So I did start already doing some sticky notes. For example, I would expect everybody to share their team or the group name, or just your own name, or basically some way that you kind of organize under the task management, and then brainstorm or add the things you're already working on. So from Farm, for example, we are doing video timestamping, and under documentation, I would say internal agenda meetings and project roadmaps. And of course, we're looking also to do some proposal deliverables on the tasks themselves. And if I start thinking about more, then probably this is now the time where I will allocate like 5 minutes to everybody to do sticky notes. I see all of them are not able to do that, so you will have to then wait for the discussion time to hop in. Also, Zoom chat you can use Zoom chat to share your tasks or groups and all the ideas you think we should be using as a project manager. And when I mentioned before, like teamwork tasking, it doesn't mean that teamwork has to be anyhow related. You can also share how you are managing your projects. Like maybe you're just having Google Calendar schedules, and this is the way you kind of capture a task, or Google Docs, or just a Google or any noting system. So, yep. Yeah, like Marisa said, when you share in the chat, you will also be able to bring these tasks into Miroboard. So, yeah. Any questions about the tasks or the expectation of what I'm requesting right now? And for easiest thing to start perhaps is something you do yourself, but find that it's not even if it's not documented, but you feel like, oh, this should be, then that's an valid thing to drop by in Miroboards. So yeah, I'm gonna give like 5 minutes, so 15, 19, we will look at all the stuff we gathered and look at that and see patterns and continue. Also, I'm gonna pause it for the video sake for the people who are watching it from YouTube.
Can you drop the link to the Miro again?
Yes. What the fuck happened? Weren't you driving?
Yeah, I was.
Uh,
But I'm back home now.
I thought maybe
It's
it was
running
a
a little bit
background
late.
screen, like what is teleportation?
Okay.
Okay. And the first 5 minutes are done. If somebody's typing in a chat, perhaps a time to get out what you need so we can grab it on the Miroboard. Perhaps 5 minutes wasn't enough because I got just my head burning. Oh, this and this, okay. But this exercise will actually get us into understanding of how far and deep all of that information can go. And what comes out of that is like the emergent, the first things you have seen what others do, or what you already are doing, and which means, and usually what you're already doing is something what has been the easiest to capture and most felt like enough tangible to record it. So let's start from the right side and see where we could already see some overlapping. And yeah, so let's start from the Singularity Net Ambassador program. So one of the tasks is here.
Tivo, sorry, for me, your
oh yes, I said
video is frozen, not your face, but your screen share.
Okay. What I'm gonna do is I did forgot to start sharing the screen.
There we go. Now it's going.
Okay, so pause share. Oh, I guess it didn't stop recording. I just stopped sharing screen. Okay, lessons learned. Yeah, so well, then I didn't miss anything about what's next to come. So onboarding new members, I see mostly VIP currently. What is VIP?
Work in progress, sorry.
Okay, yeah, work in progress. So these are something what you're looking to have, like sessions about tasks about onboarding and work group tasks. So yeah, that's a huge undertaking what could entail in work group tasks, then meeting attendance, translation tasks, and verification of those. I noticed that onboarding was also something I wrote down. So, and I think this is an important aspect because that will lead to growth of the team and shows the way to actually allow the position for somebody to be participant in whatever you're doing. And if you're like, don't really, some people don't use like a task for onboarding, but I think that is a good area where to go into. Impact lead. Do you also want to mention something?
That is one group we work with. Something you mentioned now, the onboarding. This is something they also do. They first onboard people with a Google form. And then the first task for these new people is to generate leads. So when they generate the lead, they complete another Google form and then they get paid for that. And if they can get that lead to collaborate with someone in the group, then they get rewarded for that as well. So it's just those two, or suppose 3 steps: onboarding, getting a lead, and then collaboration. And then there's also meetings, meeting attendance. And the support meetings as well. That happens when they have meetings with the new lead. So that's part of the process to work towards the collaboration.
I would say already that when you are in the meetings, that the main things what comes up in the meeting is like, okay, now we need to do this next. Who's gonna do it? So, and that sometimes leads to work group tasks. So, pull a full cycle here. And would it be correct to say that work group task could be a translation task?
Yeah, in a way, I guess within the ambassador program, the group of translators could be seen as work group. Sure, it's just right now, the current state, that's the most practical, the most progressed implementation.
Thank you. Anybody else has some insights about onboarding new members on onboarding tasks or how they are doing it? No, nobody is working on onboarding. Everybody's like, just get in this meeting. This session is coming up. But yeah.
No, just onboarding is quite difficult, I think. And like, you know, just now the project I'm working on was just pure accident. You know, a guy was working on an idea, and I just pinged him and like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna help you. I didn't even like have a slightest image of what he's doing, you know. And then he kind of opened up to it, told more, and now we're working on a nice project at Gimbal Labs, and everybody's happy about it. So you know, it's like pure accident onboarding. You cannot.
Yeah.
I
Just
think,
chaos onboarding. Go ahead, Vanessa. Sorry.
no, sorry, I was just going to say that I think one key thing that people, sorry, I know my internet is rubbish. Maybe I should put it in the chat. Can anyone hear me?
No, you can hear it. Perfect.
No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that one of the things I see often missing on onboarding is identifying who you want to reach. People tend to have this attitude of, oh, hey, anybody. But if you don't
Yeah.
target who you're trying to onboard, then you miss everyone. So it's about identifying who the communities are that you're trying to reach and making it more targeted. And that is a task in itself, I think.
Yeah. Good point.
Thank you for that. Next one from the left side. Okay.
Anything still on the onboarding is related to that, and that actually got clear while mapping out the processes related to that. Is also like deboarding, or like the alternative side of the
Yeah.
when do people become inactive. And actually dework is well pretty helpful there, since you can simply keep track of engagement or activity.
But I wonder, like, is it deboarding? It's an interesting concept. Would that be something you want to do as a task, to have like an overview of who is going to engage less?
Well, I would say not so much as a task, more like in a way a procedure to have perhaps a monthly check. Like, are there any currently deemed active members which haven't been active for whatever time span you define? It's more like a process, I guess, not a concrete task that people can apply to.
And
Yeah.
And the reason why we would look at deboarding is to just get the real sense of current capacity.
It's like a retrospective on why, for the group, on why the particular party or individual has decided to move on, and trying to tease out some reasons for that, so you can better the lives of the people who are working with you, or the parameters by which people work. This is like feedback on experience while working. Yeah.
And I think it also lowers the value of belonging to a group if there's no, if just anybody who is not active can still remain part of that group.
Right. Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Defined entrance and exit. Yeah.
And is there something about having a process about how you sort of address issues that people raise as to why they left?
Yeah, that would be the next step of that. Deboarding is something that lots of companies want to do, but they struggle doing. And then on top of it is being able to learn from that. So yeah, the protocol or framework by which to learn it learn from that feedback is super needed as well.
Let's see what we have in the middle. Impact lead generators. I noticed that you're already working on changing onboarding from generate lead, confirm collaboration. So you've been updating on that side. And I see a lot of also meeting related. Let's spare at Tarax DAO, creative tasks and recurring versus executed ones. That's interesting. So yeah, can you name a few creative tasks?
Well, actually, there's like okay. So when I was thinking with Kevin and other guys here in Catalyst about Tarax, and Tarax is just idea. Let's try to steal incentive system from Reddit and implement it in crypto. Right? And so the idea is like, what are, because takes responsibilities, but what are distinct roles? And what you have is content creation, there's content consumption, and moderation. So there's like three kind of,
very hard to hear you.
Alex, super
Sorry.
windy.
Apologies, I'm gonna find a better spot. So consumers, creators of content, and moderators, right? And so each of these categories has distinct activities associated with a role, right? And then, yeah, that's like when we're implementing it in Zwork, it was, yeah, some things you do once, some things you have to do like weekly, daily, whatever. And then some things just, they are good, but nobody came up with the idea yet, And then it's like, it's good to just have a framework for somebody just bring you an idea, right? And says like, yeah, here it is, and it's gonna be good for everyone, like Catalyst, and get rewarded for that.
Yeah, that is actually very important area. Like also understanding what are the one step stuff, and having like a clear. And what I like about this model is that usually when you choose yourself a project management like a board or like a system, it sometimes is not really meant to have all of that like recurring ideas, or like it's meant to just do high-level tasks and then you get it done. So having like an already understanding that some things I need to do recurringly and some things I need to do only once, like is this tool I'm going to use or this process I'm going to use, does it allow recurring tasks in a way that you don't have an overhead? Because in one way, even if it's recurring, it has that overhead of when you manage a task that, okay, who grades it, where do you put it, how do you audit? And if it's recurring and you're not able to implement all the configuration you did previously and you have to reapply it, it's just a huge time loss and then sometimes the discussion turns to, oh, maybe we can make it instead of daily, we're going to turn it into weekly because it's such a overhead, even though it would have more impact if you would do it daily. So, yeah, that's something we will look into later also. And another cool thing, like what you're mentioning here, is that a lot of like once when you mention here executed once, my first thing is already usually like, okay, how to like set up a server or set up like a Google Drive or create the, accounts for each people or set up wallets because we are in blockchain world. And in future we will be probably able to start choosing, okay, set up this module or this smart contract, and you just pull a bunch of things together. And this is why like I'm looking forward to more of this research we're doing right here, is that when we find this, because one setup or these daily routines or weekly routines, so that we create ourselves the resources which we could finally like just stitch together, and then already have the experience from one team how to remove the overhead, and so that every team and every project doesn't have to go through the same pain. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other insights you want to mention here? And notice the moderation was given as a creative task. No, this may not be creative. Yeah, and finally, I dropped a lot of Swarm stuff. Some brainstorming here, of course, covering the meeting area, and also meeting scheduling, coordination, announcement, copy creation. So here is a clear understanding that the facilitator joined in this session and talked in all the detailed version how meetings get divided up. But I will not go into all of these sticky notes, and would move on to the next agenda item, which is task management, documentation, and communication. So we already somewhat touched this information with the previous, but now when we zoom into it, so we have four. Basically, we have four people here, so I keep it the same. And so when we designed the framework from the first session, there were two clear distinctions in the document management and communication, is that where are the documents located and where are the communications happening. And always, like, if you have all of that covered, it felt like, oh, this is a very smooth understanding how to get tasks done or projects done. And when you look at under the location for documentation, then it's also split into three. One are resources in general, like perhaps some videos or like an overview of what we are doing here, what is your purpose, and guides of how do you do some work. So a lot of how-to stuff for the task or the project. And right now we'll prefer it like in the mind of like thinking it in the task perspective, because then the scope is smaller and then it's easier to fill it up. And templates will be done, which I'm looking now to see if we could create a lot of those, and then we can start copy pasting resources from each other. So templates are basically already pre-filled information, which you can, with slight modification, create into like a pristine new task, or a work or report. And another side of that is a location for communication. So like if there's a chat or channels, and then how many you have of them and what kind of information you put there, and then how many meetings you have, if any, and how do you have it? Because some people actually been testing around asynchronous meetings, like they just have a channel where they put videos up, but some find it very valuable to allocate 30 minutes every week or hour or 30 hours or hour one day, hour another day. So here, so there's many ways to go around it. And right now, what would like to test out, if you could take one task you are working on and you haven't, and you have some documentation, like most documentation about it, or you think it's like interesting to exercise to go through and fill out as an information, like how you have how you see this task is managed, to have any resources. And you don't have to share the documentation itself if you're not allowed or don't really have it, but then either write that what kind of documentation you have, or either write that you actually don't have, and perhaps think about why, and is it what are the barriers of why not having it. Yeah, so again, 5 minutes on that topic. Any questions before we start scribbling away?
Yeah, so each one of these, we would work on one of these segments ourselves.
Yeah, so for example, under here, we would do some swarm thinking. And you bring like one task, let's say, let's take a random proposal drivers. Okay, let's get more detail. SOM, I don't know what is SOM, monthly reporting. So
Statement
let's
of
say,
milestones.
yeah. and then you take this one simple task. Let's say we take a monthly reporting from here. That's a task somebody has to do. But the person who is going to do is a totally new one. So he's like, okay, where are your resources even to do that? And now if I think about Swarm and like, when I will have to do a monthly progress report, where will I go first? Probably something what was previously done before, previous progress reports. So not ideal, would be better to have perhaps some kind of special area where could that information would be. But this is our current state. And then I could, of course, then mention that, yeah, we would like a special documentation around that. Are there any progress guides? Not internally, we are using IOG provided guideline.
Right.
Or at least I'm not, it's maybe a bit of bias because I'm not even doing progress reports, and maybe there already is a very good system behind that. But that's like idea of like, how would you then go around and typing up your like, where are these all the sources are. Templates, of course, if you are like, oh yes, we have a template, then you can share a document link, or just mention, yes, we have a template where we just change these values because a very, very specific report we do every month. And location for communication, I'm not aware that we have any Discord channels or Telegram channels that we mentioned, so we technically have no communication in this case. And coordination, perhaps I would say that we might, so far I haven't really been any of the coordination, and if there anything happening, but there could be upcoming or sessions what I'm not aware of where people meet, okay, what do we put on the progress reports this month?
So Tivo, people are taking one task that they do. It doesn't have to be monthly reports. It can be any task they want to.
Yes, yes.
Cool, nice one.
Any more questions? That's after went through the exercise.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, this time I'm gonna really pause the. So we have some updates now, and let's get it started. I guess right from right to left. So Simulator Ambassador Program. In your own words, was this a small exercise? Well, what kind of task you chose, and can you go over where are your resources, guides, templates, progress reports, and how do you coordinate it all?
Sure thing. Well, task I chose is translating, and this is mostly translating blog posts. So the resource would become, well, our blog. alternate, yeah, I guess Google Translate is helping out some people. But yeah, blog would be the main resource. Then on guides on how to do this. Basically, Gitbook outlines the process on how to get started and apply for the task and what kind of things we're looking for. Part of that is also included in the template. So we have a dwork template for a translation task, and this outlines a bit of background why it's important to have these tasks in the first place, what it contributes, what to look out for, and some expectations on quality. Then on the communication, basically, if somebody translates the task, there's not that much communication happening. Like they apply, it gets assigned, they submit work, that's it. So there's no intermediate steps on which to report on progress. On the coordination level, one-on-one stuff. If somebody has a concrete question, like, I don't know, having trouble translating a specific concept, or can be anything, but it's usually solved via Discord DM simply. And part of the communication takes place after the work is completed. Then it will be publicly shared for the community to access this translation.
Right, thank you. I thought of a new idea that I'm gonna color code them, which showing that as a green one, it's something very, very, very good, that there is a resource to pull from and that everything needs to be right. A yellow one, which is like in progress, so that in a sense, like things may break and not all of that which is needed may be included into the guides. And the pink one for like, okay, this is a complete failure in that task. But so perhaps when we go up to the next section and also color code, later we'll find where are the commonality, or if there is a commonality in like things we are able to do well, and which are the harder parts. Impact lead generators. So who's gonna?
Okay. The process is the same for generating the lead and confirming the collaboration. So they have, for resources, they have Google Slides that they usually share with people who join the Discord, or anyone new. They will share the slides with them. And I think they've got a YouTube video as well where they show how to complete the tasks in dwork. Now they used to have a form, a Google form, where you would enter the details for the lead, but then they would have to align with dwork and the Google form. So they decided to take the Google form away and just make a template in dwork where people will just answer the questions in dwork, so they would have it all in one place. So that's, and then, yeah, that's pretty new, but so yeah, this, I think then it doesn't really work well with the Google Sheet, because they had everything in one Google Sheet where they would, at coordination meetings, they would look at this Google Sheet and then approve look at the info, and if they need something from the contributor, then they will contact them, or they would just approve in the coordination meeting. So I suppose that Google Sheet, I think they just look at dwork for progress now. Not dwork, not the Google Sheet anymore.
That's cool. Okay, but there are still meetings for coordination?
Yes, yeah.
How many of them? Like, is it weekly, bi-weekly, or is it like for onboarding?
Just 1 hour per week.
And well, what you mentioned felt like all of these areas were kind of covered in your sense. If all these resources are available and in a sense that they are open source, we will asynchronously contact you in order to get this information also on the Miroboard, because templates for confirming collaboration, Google Slides, YouTube videos, all that work would be, I think, highly appreciated for many who start think newly and also want to get like on-board collaboration, but have no clue how to even start with it.
Yes.
If that's
Okay.
okay, then
I
we
will
can.
ask them. I'm sure it will be fun.
And if not, then at least some more detail. But yeah, not going overall to
Yeah.
that in the meeting itself.
Okay.
And hello, Kendrick, for joining. We're currently going through a little exercise we had and sharing our experiences from either from one task's perspective. How do we manage the resources of the task, guides, templates, and how do we coordinate progress and like meetings?
Great. Yeah, nice to be able to join you.
So in this from this farm, Peter picked up after downhole. So you dropped a lot of resources here. So can you share nicely what?
Yeah. So so for documentation location, we have specific resources that the team looks at. We have public chat channels in our Discord that people sometimes ask questions and whatnot, and we answer. We also sometimes get emails, so we have to pay attention to email inbox as well. We have Google Drive folders to work out of. We have one main Google Drive folder to work out of, and occasionally we do some curation of that content. We have I put each of us as humans as resources, and part of that is our ability to, well, just kind of the humans measure the momentum and know when we need to update different parts of this process and whatnot. I'd say another resource, major resources, is the deadlines that we have provided, that we have created for the different. There's key tasks in this process that hand information and resources to another role on the team, or a deadline for, we have a deadline for people who want to host a space in the after town hall to sign up on our Google form, which I don't even think I threw the Google form on here. That's one. And then we have an actual guide that outlines our complete process. And then we have templates for, we have a live document, a live Excel sheet that tracks all of the people who participated, a snapshot of how many people are in their room. We track 5 to 10 minutes into the after town hall, how many people are in each room. We have emails, title of the room, description, link to our upload, all in this pipeline document. And so that's a templated resource. I mean, it's a templated documentation that it just grows and grows and grows. And then we also have weekly slide deck output. So you have to announce everyone, as well as other community events that end up in that slide deck. And there's some process for that as well, and criteria by which communities can submit to that deck. Mostly it's just ask and have good quality information on the thing, and it looks good. There's not a ton of criteria. And then we also have some templates for meeting for feedback from hosts. So after each week after, well, we started this a couple months ago, and then no more. We haven't had town halls in a while, and that, but each one of the, we send a feedback email to all the hosts, as well as to make sure we get their wallet address to compensate, to track their participation with Gimbal tokens. And yeah, most of the templates are either copied in, like, you just copy the last week's slide deck and update it with different things. Yeah.
I will say the same thing on this case, that asynchronously, I will perhaps get in touch with you to get some documentation also in this Miroboard, because again, this is a lot of good material for people to feedback how they are doing it, and then able to have a source to do these kind of things. And there is a lot of documentation from our side. I linked up humans as a purple because I wouldn't say a location for documentation, and humans is, and when we talk about resources, was more like documentation resources, not humans.
Yeah.
But I made it a purple because that is something I never really thought perhaps I should have it in the framework, some area where like you described the human resources, where they are allocated, and like
humans store a lot of information that if it doesn't get written down, it's because people stored it just on the fly.
And quickly we'll also go share a bit of trees. I took an onboarding session, which felt like quite a hard task to kind of manage. And then throw in 3 onboarding Miroboards I was using, one for Project Catalyst, one for Swarm, and one for some also a bit of Project Catalyst, but more from a Catalyst circle side. And then the huge problem with that is it's hard to kind of make a guideline for also for like onboarding, and it's been quite unless you consider the Miroboards themselves are guides. There are sometimes a video, but most of these are like private chats, so you can't really turn them into guides like that either. Of course, templates, no real templates to create onboardings on such a huge scale, and funnily, no channels, nor even coordination with team itself. So when I onboard somebody to Swarm, nobody knows that I do that, and who was that, and why is that. So it's a fun way to kind of see that in community, there's people come and go, and it's hard to kind of express from which was the reason and what kept them there. From this quick snapshot we had, I somewhat feel like easier tasks were taken from the middle, but most of them included a lot of this kind of like onboarding discussion which we had before. So it's nice to capture that, and asynchronously let's get some also detailed documentation to compare it later when I share the overview of outcome of this session. And I will jump into the next coordination management, and hopefully this will be a bit quicker, but a similar exercise. So let me quickly share what this is about now. So this actually has been the hardest part, to kind of create a framework. So perhaps this meeting will help us to refine it a bit more. So when we talk about coordination management, where before we discussed like how do we coordinate, and then most chat was like, these are internal meetings or weekly meetings. Some have chats, some don't have. But now to even turn it even like more explode it more into smaller pieces, then found 3 main areas of that. Onboarding, facilitation. So how do you get person into doing a task? then check-in facilitation. How do you audit the work, or what are the rules of like checking is the task progressing properly, and then oversight as like once it's done, who's gonna do the final check, and once it's done, checked, and it's 1 month has passed, 2 months has passed, do you come back to it and look at it retrospectively, or use or reuse the like the results from the task? And for now, each of these also in more detail, like all of these, because you're facilitating that, and we expect that is an like a meeting or an agenda or some kind of Google form, or whatever way you are coordinating, someone has to prepare it, and either the preparation is copy pasting a template, changing a few things, or doing a complete analysis of okay, how to progress now with the task. Another, the next step is to coordinate, invite people to the workshop, or invite people into that, and how well is that thought through, and then finally how is all the feedback is assessed, by who perhaps, and yeah. So these are basically in 3 different areas, 3 different elements, and now when you take your tasks you shared before, so for after downhaul and confirmed collaboration for general lead, and I see Andrew dropped off, but also Singularity Net, like the translation tasks, how do you capture all of these elements? And Kenrick, in this section, you actually could also join in on the Miroboard if you haven't had the link.
Oh yeah.
I don't have the link, but
Great.
it can be posted.
Dropping it into chat. And then you can also take one space, think over one idea, and you will have, and then take a task you have, we would be able to most answer these questions. And if not, then simply share that, yeah, we haven't really thought about that. And later we come back to it and ask, okay, why is it not needed? And then when you have something to say which didn't really fit, also add it. So because now this is a place where we kind of start refining that section itself, like as a framework to fit all kinds of needs. Yeah. Any questions related to the final workshop or final doing?
Yeah, can we work on an example just to kick us off a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I brought in onboarding sessions.
Yeah.
And first of all, when we talk about onboarding facilitation, this is something I do. I do prepare the workshop in a sense that I check the background of the person who I'm inviting to, and then I choose basically my onboarding method. So a lot of people like want to just, hey, what are you doing in Project Catalyst? What can I do? And then I look at the background and see if I want to invite him to some community. Is it a developer? Do I want to share him about Gimbal? Do I want to share him about Project Catalyst? And so this is, here I do a lot of background work. Then coordination usually happens in the LinkedIn or like in the medium they are using. So I'm not trying to force them, hey, join Discord, and then I make you an invite. And finally, assessing the feedback is, to be honest, I really don't do that. And so when after the session is done, I rarely go back and, hey, how was it about? But definitely something I should keep in mind and hit up people in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, like what. So I'm glad if they are in, like in the next week, I see them in sessions or in playgrounds or wherever. And but yeah, I never deliberately go and re-evoke the experience and to hear what is to. In check-in facilitation for onboarding sessions, that's now comes back to this again, that yes, because I'm not doing like recheck on them, I usually don't have a check-in facilitation, except when they are coming back to me and asking more stuff, and then I get reduce that as an oversight. Again, something I'm really doing very badly. Don't really coordinate with everybody that, hey, this new person joined in, or like, this is things that he likes to do, but leave all that information for the onboardee to share. Any more questions?
Yeah, Peter had a question in the chat.
Yeah, basically it might be just me, but the way
No.
check-in and oversight facilitation are named is yeah, a little confusing to me. Based on your explanation, I got the impression it was more about either quality control or progress update on the check-in facilitation, and perhaps
Yeah.
For the oversight one, felt more like yeah, review or I'm not sure, something related to that, if I understand correctly.
Yes, well, yeah, that now perhaps there is a difference between QA and oversight, and probably something which we may need to expand even. So yeah, so this is the point where we kind of, yeah, maybe even this this check-in was a bit clunky, so progress report is a much nicer word for that, and thank you for that. But perhaps, yeah, in oversight section, maybe there is like a third area of QA fashion and like a quality assurance. But use it right now as the way you understand it. Change the name if the oversight doesn't really fit you, and this is something I can we can learn from to in the future iterating on the framework. So I'm gonna give everybody 5 minutes, and then I also scribble down what I just said. So another small exercise was done, and let's start from the right side, from SingularityNet. How do you find this exercise to be valuable, and what did you found out about your project coordination?
I think it's useful. It does show some things not being in place. Yeah, I mean, you're on in this case, on a personal level involved at this. For example, on the oversight facilitation part of things, the way we maybe let's start at the start, or want to go over it quickly?
I think, that's a good point. Let's go over it in a nice pace. I don't think we need to hurry. Okay.
So yeah, on onboarding for new translators in this task specific. Simply an outline for a one-to-one call with a new person, covering a bunch of background and experience. That's the preparation. Well, to actually have the call planned and have perform the call, that's the second step. And then portion of feedback is gathered by having this new translator as way of a test submit its first translation. And then on progress report, right now we don't really have this in place. The work does get verified in a separate task, and that is kind of where that's simply the next step after somebody submits work. And if that verification is without problems, there's no feedback at all besides accepting the work. If there's a problem in translation, this is solved in DM on a 1-by-1 base. So that's also not really not properly in place. And feedback on that, there is no feedback. There's just a one-on-one conversation with this translator indicating what the problems are, and then that's the end of it, more or less. And then on oversight, we do have a process guild. That's what I mentioned earlier. That's where you personally are involved as well. Basically, I would say we're at 90% of mapping all the, in full detail, mapping out all the required steps of this task. That's proved to be quite a bit more complex than we initially figured out. Coordination for that is a weekly meeting. And the feedback on that, it's somewhat in place, not really though. Either we simply implement what's being decided during these meetings, or we feed it into the town hall for decision making.
Thank you for that. Let's have one more. Peter, even after town hall, how did you found this exercise to be? And go through what you have.
Yeah, all right. Found this exercise a little more opaque. So we don't have any like workshops directly facilitating onboarding, but we do have documents in channels and resources and links to those documents in the slides that go out in our outputs, in each of our outputs essentially. And we coordinate invitation to the participate in the product that we're coordinating through those elements as well. And then we assess feedback through the email and form that we send out after each iteration of this event. Then as far as progress report facilitation, we're weekly iterating on the product, so we go over we use a recurring meeting to do that coordination, and it's not specifically like directed towards it's more of a team it's an interesting, lots of things happen in that weekly calls, but I put in here that it's essentially an agenda driven call, and anyone can add to that agenda and it'll get discussed in the meeting, and that's a key component. I think that you need that. If you just have to have a place where people can get the things talked about that are important to whatever role that and tasks that they're working on in coordination with other people for these group outputs. And in this group, we've chosen to do that via an agenda-driven meeting. And so that facilitates progress and then reporting that ends up in our outputs, like the pipeline document that there's a baseline of reporting that has to be done each week. And then oversight facilitation, I said this is quite flat hierarchy on the team, so there's no one directly doing oversight, but each person is a product owner for the tasks that they do each week, and then they hand those to the next person in the process. So there's Yeah, those product owners need to are expected to speak up and get the needs met to be able to unblock them in weekly calls, via the agenda, or just via, you know, asking your teammate in an internal chat. And yeah, assess these assessments would happen, yeah, async in chats, or and then most major things or adjustments spoken asynchronously in chats also make it into the agenda driven meeting. And then quality assurance, frankly, on this team there's a ton of checks. Each person has their own responsibility, and it generally works really pretty smoothly. And yes, we mess up sometimes, but coordinating a lot of moving parts, so it happens. But it would be cool to have, it would be useful to have some separate tasks for more directly related to making sure we do quality assurance, for sure.
Thank you for that. It did give a very, at least I like the picture of what you were describing. How does how does the information flow from onboarding to actually finishing up? And the more it moved over, in the end, the more I noticed it's just kind of like a spreads around in all of these chats and like. So, but I think that was one of the calls at the town halls, to create discussions, to create like more interactions. And so, yeah, it was nice to hear how this kind of framework forced out of that story.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're almost out of time. So, but I thought I'd rather listen a well articulated story of how the coordination, and even though we're out of time, those who have to leave, that's fine. I will share you quickly a session feedback link, which is also in the bottom. And this will help us to kind of touch more of these points, like how was the running of that session? What was there anything useful you found out, and how could we improve it? And another thing is that this, when you participated there, we are actually sharing 100 Kimball to each participant, and we distribute 500 ADA to everybody who shares their wallet address. You can use any name or Discord account, so it's not related to that you have to with the Discord name, and you can use any pseudonym you want if you want to keep yourself private, because these rewards will be tracked in the Google Sheet, which Swarm is collecting. But yeah.
Yep. Treasury documentation.
But I will definitely would like to hear what did you learn from there, or like what kind of differences you noticed, or where the system broke down. Any final thoughts here regarding that?
Yeah.
Because in the differences part, I would say that a lot of that was very different, because one was more on the translations. After Town Hall and the onboarding stuff I brought up, that had quite the similar vibe, but it could clearly differentiate the fact that where after Town Hall, actually you have a team there, and there is a lot of moving parts and experience in like conducting that you were able to cover all of these kinds of topics where I brought up onboarding. How do I do it onboarding? It's like, yeah, I started, and then we have a session, and then it's gone. Like nothing else is there. So this is one of the differences I noticed. And the small sample size as we have on the coordination side, I can also say that On the SingularityNet side, it looks like the final assessment part is a bit like, okay, now we did a result. Was that result good now? was that? But it's getting quite well. Also, like as in hearing that it did feel like it's not all needed. It's already like system is somewhat feels like is there, but slight improvements could be made by just adds overhead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fully agree.
This is what I see in the difference between these two things, between after town hall and SingularityNet task thing, is the difference between like after town hall has a recurring meeting, so it's not completely asynchronous. Like the process you're describing, Peter, seems like it's just complete. It's complete. There's no like time, like rhythm in it. It's just a coordination of different one-on-one interactions versus having a sync point in the week that with like face-to-face almost, or voice at least. Yeah.
No, that's accurate, but in a way that's also yeah, almost inherent to this specific task. Like, I'm not super interested
You don't need it. Yeah.
Like if the translation is going well, you know.
Yeah.
That's too micro, let's say.
Definitely.
But it definitely indicated yeah, some gaps. And
well, just in the process, like that. Yeah. It's that I'm curious. I'm just interested in like the extent by which we can do things asynchronously, you know, like because humans have to have rhythm to coordinate with each other to do more complex things. So what is where do you max out on being able to be asynchronous and do coordination? I don't know. That's a curious part of this that I'm tracking.
One thing I noticed was a similarity rather than a difference, and I think it's probably a cross-catalyst. If we have pathways for quality assurance, we tend to focus on what people have done wrong, and we very rarely look at what has gone right. And I see that in both of those.
Yeah.
If we have what?
If we have pathways in place for quality assurance, we tend to focus on picking up what's gone wrong, rather than looking at how we can amplify what's gone right.
So essentially, when we try to do quality assurance, we end up focusing on what's gone wrong versus over what's gone right. It's more easy to do that.
Well, it's easier to identify, isn't it, and to pick up on, but often we just don't have a pathway for looking at what the good aspects were. I mean, you know, sometimes we'll have a feedback form and we'll ask, oh, what went right? But we don't necessarily have any structures for how we, amplify that and make it happen more.
Yeah, can't ignore what goes right.
How to scale the cool things. How about that?
Yeah.
And also, I guess also looking at why they went right. Yeah, because sometimes it's a matter of scale, or it's a matter of who was there on the day, and you kind of need to recognize that, and maybe you can't replicate it. I don't know.
Yeah, you can at least find themes and behavioral themes.
Yeah. That I was wondering how it will go once we start doing the tasks and realize I may need the examples already in place, but it's like, how hard can it be? There's just 5 sticky notes. So, it's it's an interesting area of that. I could mention already that the next session is probably around like, not a good question because next month is a lot of Christmas stuff and a lot of happy time with families and friends. So at worst case, we ran another session on January, at best case somewhere in December. And then we will look, so where today, where we tested of how do we, is it possible to even articulate your own task experiences under like resource management documentation, and then defining like how do we even coordinate that, and if does it bring out relevant information of the task. And so then another one of the thing from the framework is actual task management itself, and there is already guides used. So this process used in SingularityNet as a test case, and we'll bring up next session some how if you go really detail into this and you see right now, okay, these are issues or these things are missing, like what happens if you fill it all up and you document everything and you have always something to click on and able to clarify, see how was this done for this particular task. And then as a discussion around, is this something useful? Is this framework itself well defined to do that kind of work? And perhaps some practice how to improve it. So that's the main topics of the next session. And if all of these things are going to be successful in a sense that, hey, this is something where we can sit down, brainstorm, get a bit of behind working, pulling together different guides and resources. And then over time, I hope that this could be used to scale any kind of like project management, wherever they are doing. Although, yeah, you got to consider right now we're trying to model it into dwork. So even if we have like a perfect solution on the Miroboard on the documentation, it may not work as well on the tools we actually have in use. So there's a lot of like lessons learned from that too. And yeah. Any final words or things people want to bring up?
Just that it was a super interesting session, and thank you, Tiva.
Yeah, second that.
All right. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. See ya in the next video.